I'm sure all of you have heard recently about how the pipeline for new pharmaceuticals is drying up. The pipeline's drying up, despite the fact that companies like Sanofi-Aventis, for whom I work, spend billions each year on research and development. And you've also heard, I'm sure, that the old model for the pharmaceutical industry, the model that worked in the 20th century, is no longer working in the 21st century. So perhaps now is a good time to try a new approach. In my presentation tonight, Open Innovation to Improve Healthcare, or as I like to call it, Who's Building the Puzzle, is designed to show you how open innovation is being adopted by the pharmaceutical industry. Now tonight I'm going to focus on 4 points very quickly. The first point is that in the pharmaceutical industry, it's a very, very complex puzzle, and there are many moving parts to that. And to expect one company to be able to handle expertly across all those different parts is really not feasible. You need partners. The second point I'm going to describe is how the pharmaceutical industry has used open innovation for some remarkable healthcare results. And I'm going to give a couple examples of that. The third point I'm going to address is how there's been an explosion recently in open innovation in the pharmaceutical industry. And I'm going to use some dealings that Sanofi-Aventis, my company, has done recently to show that explosion. And fourth, I'm going to point out that open innovation is not inconsistent with appropriate respect for intellectual property rights. They are completely consistent. And by the end of this, my short presentation, I hope you have a better understanding of open innovation, how it's being used in the pharmaceutical industry. So let's start. Okay. The fundamental premise, how can we improve healthcare? Well, for the pharmaceutical industry, it's bringing new pharmaceutical treatments that are safe and effective to people that need them. Okay, so it seems like a pretty simple formula. But behind this simple formula is a lot of complexity. Okay, so we have a lot of puzzle pieces. How are we going to put them together? Okay, so a new pharmaceutical, you need a new therapeutic. It can be a small molecule, a chemical. It can be a biologic. But how do you get that? Well, first of all, you have to have a disease state. And then you have to know the appropriate target to target for that disease state. And then you have to have a therapeutic that's going to hit that target. Okay, so that takes a lot of time. And there's a lot of time spent on hopeful solutions that really don't pan out. Okay, but if you do find a therapeutic that hits that target, okay, the next step has to be, if you're going to give it to people, it has to be safe and effective. Okay, now safe means that the benefits are going to outweigh the harm to the individual. And that's hard, sometimes that's very, very hard to show. You have clinical trials, you have regulatory rules, and of course sometimes it depends on the patient population. You have different people in different parts of the world responding differently. And of course, even once you get a pharmaceutical that may be safe and effective, then you actually have to get it to the people. Okay, and getting it to the people is an interesting problem as well. There's manufacturing issues, there's the distribution issues, there are local regulations that may affect the distribution, and then of course there is always the issue of cost. You know, who's going to pay for it, and how can they afford it, and that type of thing. So there's a lot of moving parts to this. And again, you know, to try to be expert at all these different pieces by yourself, it's just not going to happen. Okay, now, the pharmaceutical industry actually has been using open innovation to some extent in the past, even in the 20th century model. I mean, there has always been collaboration with doctors and institutions looking for new therapeutics, trying to find new targets, and those collaborations have been very, very successful in the past. But they were somewhat closed in the sense that the working relationship was very tight and it wasn't as open as we're hoping to be now in the 21st century. And we've also partnered with governments and public institutions concerning certain neglected populations and orphan diseases. And in this sort of open innovation development has been very successful. I'm going to talk about two that Sanofi-Aventis has been involved in concerning malaria and sleeping sickness that shows how open innovation has worked within the pharmaceutical industry. So let's turn to those two examples. Okay, this is a crowded slide. These are graphics that I pulled off the internet at Sanofi-Aventis. The one on the left talks about our ASAQ partnership, and that was done with the DNDI initiative, which is a consortium of public institutions from different countries. We came together, we worked together to try to come up with an anti-malarial for people in sub-Saharan Africa. at a cost that makes sense. And it turns out in this situation, the cost is really at cost. There's no profit made on this. And it's about a little less than $1 for an adult treatment, a little less than 50 cents for a child. And through this program, working with the external partners, we've treated about 50 million people with this anti-malarial, and we've saved millions of lives. And Sanofi-Aventis actually did an analysis of this and determined that by partnering externally, we were able to bring this medicine to the people that needed it about a year earlier. And when you're talking about malaria, a year is millions of people. Okay, so you're talking millions of lives. So here, an external partnership resulted in a real tangible benefit for people who needed it at a price where the governments that are trying to help their people can afford to do that. Okay. The one on the right here is an initiative that Sanofi-Aventis has been involved in during the last decade concerning sleeping sickness. And it turns out that if you get sleeping sickness and you're not treated, you will die. Okay, it is terminal if you get it and it's not treated. It also turns out that for sleeping sickness, you have to catch it fairly soon. If you catch it too late in the process, it becomes too complicated to treat. So screening is very important. So here you're talking about, okay, you have a pharmaceutical, and we developed a pharmaceutical working with the WHO and Doctors Without Borders. But having the pharmaceutical is not enough. You have to diagnose the people. So you have to have people out in the field interviewing these people, testing these people, okay? And then you've got to get the treatment to them early on, or else it's not going to be effective. So here you need an external partnership if you're really going to treat the population. And in this situation, we did it at no cost. The people came together, we did it at no cost. And I think at last tally, it's saved over 100,000 lives in Africa. 100,000 people are alive today because of this external collaboration, this open innovation. Okay. So now where are we today? I like to think of what's happening in the pharmaceutical industry as sort of external business development is actually becoming part of internal research and development. Research and development dollars that were spent internally on sort of internal dreams and internal aspirations are now being shared with people outside companies who have their own dreams. And to think, again, this has been brought up today several times, to think that you have all the good ideas is just a silly thought, okay? So there are a lot of people out there who are looking for different opportunities, looking for solutions to problems that you may not have focused on. And the other thing that's happening through open innovation is that companies are becoming more global. And it's sort of a paradox. The more global you become, actually the more local you're becoming. Because when you partner with people globally, they understand their populations. They understand their problems better than you do. So if you're a company and you're sitting in the United States or Western Europe and you're focusing on certain disease states there, and then you're thinking, okay, I'm going to become global by taking my solution to these problems around the globe and trying to apply the same business model across the same pharmaceuticals, chances are you're not going to be successful that way because populations change, problems are different, how you get the understanding of the people and how they take the drugs are different, education is different, literacy rates are different. I mean, they're just fundamentally different problems. And to sit there in Western Europe and think you're going to figure that out by reading a book or doing some study as opposed to going there and working with people who are actually living that experience, I mean, that's the answer. So as large pharmaceuticals become global, I actually think they're becoming more local. And you can see that in what we've been doing. So first of all, this is just a smattering of some of the deals that we've done over the last year and a half. And the slide's somewhat busy, but you can see there's been a lot of focus on biotech and partnering with startups or academia institutions. There's been some acquisitions that we've made. This is across Europe, US, and Asia. We've also done deals in Latin America that I didn't have room to put up on the slide. But you can see that there's a lot of work externally, and a lot of these companies are focused on local problems, focused on more narrow disease states, more narrow populations. And then also, so here's an example. So here's Sanofi-Aventis, what I call being openly innovative in China. We have an R&D facility that we've opened up in Shanghai, which is, we're getting the input of local people there in Shanghai. We're working with a biometrics center in Beijing. That center is looking at Asian populations, trying to figure out what are better clinical trials, what are better ways of approaching these populations, something that we just couldn't do on our own. I mean, it would not happen on our own. And then, of course, we're working in Shanghai with the Biological Sciences Institute there, and we're sharing ideas. So this is an example of going global, making us very, very local in China. And another example that's a little bit closer to home for us is a biologics plant that we're building in France. It's to make biologics, and we're in the process of doing that. And this was a collaboration with the French government because the government wants to sort of get more involved in biologics. And what we're doing is we're building this plant that can make biologics, and we're gonna make our own products in it, of course, but we're also gonna let other people come and use it. All right? And so here you're talking about a delivery system where people may have good answers to problems, but can't make the drug because maybe they can't afford to build something like this. We can, right? So you're opening up to maybe startup companies or institutions or doctors who have an idea and say, I want to try this out, but they don't have the money to build a large plant like this. The benefit, of course, to the public is not only getting new medicines, but also there's a benefit by, and you've seen this a lot in Silicon Valley in the United States, where when you start a large company, you seed other companies, you seed new ideas, you seed startups. So by having this facility in France, there are going to be people with a lot of good ideas who have access to this, and they'll be able to bring those ideas to the marketplace. And the final point I want to make is that all this open innovation is completely consistent with respect for intellectual property rights, because all these puzzle pieces that we've been talking about, some people are going to own some pieces, we're going to own some pieces, or maybe we're not going to own any pieces at all. Maybe we're going to have the manufacturing facility, or maybe we're going to have the distribution network. But you can, to get a pharmaceutical to the market in an intelligent way, you can trade these pieces, you can license them, you can give them away. And you can do this either for a certain population, for a certain region. In the ASAQ pharmaceutical that we do for malaria, we have tiered pricing. It's at cost, but it's tiered pricing. So those that really can't afford it, they get it for much cheaper. So you can do that with intellectual property. You can cut this any way you want to, and just because you can enforce intellectual property doesn't mean you should. There are situations where you should. There are situations where you have to protect your profit stream so you stay in business. If you go out of business, obviously, you can't bring new pharmaceuticals to the marketplace. But there are situations where you shouldn't enforce your IP, and you don't have to. So this to me is something that a lot of people don't understand, but it's really quite a simple concept. Just because you have it doesn't mean you have to use it. And you can use it selectively to do the right thing. So in conclusion, I like to think that pharma has open arms to open innovation. And whether it's R&D or whether it's patient populations or manufacturing and distribution, we're working externally with people to try to bring new and improved pharmaceuticals to improve healthcare globally. So thank you for your attention. At the end of the presentations, perhaps we'll have some time for questions.